everyone, it's Shamar again here with SWHR Consulting, and today we're going to talk about independent contractor versus W-2 employee. So I know that this topic is one of the hot ones for a lot of individuals, especially businesses, when they're trying to decide on if they should hire an independent contractor or a W-2 employee. And typically, what I've noticed a lot of times with new up-and-coming businesses, they tend to struggle with which one they need to utilize when they're starting. And a lot of times they are not in a place financially to hire a full-time W-2 employee, having to pay their salary, possibly providing benefits if you wanted to, and having to then pay into payroll taxes is not always feasible when you're starting a business, when all the money that you are bringing in needs to be funneled back into the business to help it grow. So they tend to lean towards hiring an independent contract to help with, task-based projects that they can come in and help your organization with as you kind of grow. And then once you get to a point of being able to afford a full-time employee, a W-2 employee, then you can transition that independent contractor into that role, or of course hire additional teammates at a W-2 status. So today, what I wanted to do is talk about the difference between independent contractor versus W-2 employees. So let's start with just defining what an independent contractor is. So an independent contractor is either a consultant, a freelancer, and it's a business or an individual that typically is self-employed, and they provide a service or a product for customers in exchange for monetary compensation, right? What is an independent contractor agreement? So before you decide on hiring an independent contractor, you need to create a contract agreement between yourself and that contractor that defines what exactly that person is going to be helping you with. And when you think about an independent contractor, you want to make sure that you understand when you're hiring an independent contractor that it's for a specific service or for a project, and that is typically defined as a short-term type of project that you're bringing them in to handle short-term tasks. Right? It's not like an employment agreement where this document clearly spells out what that employee is going to do for your company. And it also, is a legally binding document when you think about both of them, essentially. But with an employee agreement, that again, holds you accountable for the things that you put in it and the things that you promise that employee within that contract. So that's just the big difference between the independent contractor, which two parties come together and agree on the terms of the services provided, whereas the employee agreement is more of the terms that the employee set forth in that document for the employee themselves, and some of the things that they may promise the employee within that document. So these documents usually address the following basic elements. So within a contract agreement, these are some of the things that you would see. The hiring company's name, so the person or entity in need of service, in need of services. Contractor, which is the person or entity hired for the project or task. You want to define your compensation, so how much, how often will the contractor be paid. Services, a specific description of the task to be performed or work produced to be delivered in your contract. Effective date, so when the agreement actually begins and when the job actually starts. You also would have in there the termination stipulation. So whether the hiring company decides to end the relationship at any time, you want to be able to put in there the notices, like how much notice either party will give each other when they decide to terminate the contract. Typically, you'll see at least a 30-day notice, but it can be shorter just depending on how you write the contract and if that independent contractor is going to agree to those stipulations. So you always want to add those types of things. As you can see, when it comes to fringe benefits, those are not included and should not be included in your independent contractor agreement, because that specifically speaks to employees, right? That's when you're talking about vacation pay, sick pay, unemployment benefits, health, pensions, those types of things, 401k, healthcare, all those types of things are what you would offer in your fringe benefits, which is more towards employee status versus independent contractor. So you want to make sure that that is excluded within your contract, because if you do include that, then that can confuse the independent contractor into thinking that they are an employee with your company. So please be careful in the languaging that you're adding in your independent contractor when it comes to writing that document. Some of the differences between a contractor and an employee and who you should hire really explains, again, how to classify those individuals in either contractor or an employee status. So below, I'm going to show you some specifics that, shows the difference between both. So in an independent contractor agreement, you want to make sure, and this is how you identify in making sure that they are independent contractor, is that they're self-employed. You understand that it is a short-term or seasoned position or job, specific project or clear task. You understand that the control of what the independent contractor is doing is on their terms, not on yours. So you're limited to what you can and cannot tell them and how they should and shouldn't work. Also, in terms of evaluating on results and end product. So if it's a project, the goal is for them to accomplish the project, and at the end of the project, you should have something to show for it, because that's what you hired them for. They typically utilize their own tools and equipment, so you don't provide that to them. They're responsible for their own liability insurance, whether that is professional liability, general liability. If they have a commercial space, for example, they can have commercial liability insurance. And you have to understand that if they are injured on the job, in terms of being an independent contractor, your workers' compensation does not kick in, because that's not your responsibility. They're not employees. Their insurance at that point should kick in to cover any expenses. As I already mentioned, they buy their own work insurance, they pay their own health care, they're responsible for paying their own taxes. And again, they can negotiate with you in terms of the contract, like, what are some of the terms. So let's take a look now at some of the employee differences and how you can identify if the person is an employee. So they're evaluated based on the process of work. They are provided company tools and equipment. They are actually covered under your workers' comp insurance. They are covered under your insurance as a whole. You provide them with health insurance. You pay their state and federal taxes. And the company owns any work or product or intellectual property of yours. So as you can see with independent contractor, you want to make sure that in your agreement speaks on your intellectual property, speaks on confidentiality, speaks on trade secrets. So anything that you share with them still belongs to you, and that they're understanding that if they decide to take your stuff and utilize it elsewhere, then you can, go after them at that point, because they signed all those agreements as it pertains to the information that you shared with them belonging to you. So you still have the ability to go after them if things, if they decided to take things that was created or shared with them when they were working on your project. So when you're hiring an independent contractor, there's 3 things that you want to collect from them. One being the W-9 form. So you want to make sure that they complete the W-9 form, because that information is going to be utilized at the end of the year so that you can provide them with a 1099 document. And when you actually complete the 1099 document, it's always over $600. So if you pay anyone $600 or more within that year, you have to provide them with a 1099 form. So collect that information up front so that you can handle the 1099 form at the end of the year. Very similar to a W-2 that is presented to excuse me, employees at the end of the year. The second thing that you want to do is collect a resume or a documentation of qualification. So before you hire anyone, you should request and keep a copy of documents showing the qualification of this person for the work being done. It is best to get a detailed resume from that person so you can understand their education level and previous work experience, so that you're hiring the right contractor to help you succeed on your project, because the end goal is to have a finished product. And then documentation 3. So the last thing that you want to collect, of course, is the written contractor agreement that you both sign. And within it, as I explained before, is going to discuss the requirements of the independent contractor, the relationship that you guys have with each other, so that if there's any kind of dispute between you two, then you can always reference that document to say, hey, this is what we signed. And so some of the issues that need to be addressed in your contractor agreement are the scope of work, the amounts and timing of payment, so when you're going to pay the independent contractor for their work done, who owns the work. So as I mentioned to you, if they create something for you, you want to make sure that it belongs to you at the end of the project so that you're not in that debate with them. You want to make sure that the contractor understands that they are an independent contractor and not an employee. So please make sure that that's very clear within your independent contractor agreement. So now that you understand what an independent contractor is versus a W-2 employee, what happens if you misclassify an independent contractor? Okay, so there's heavy fines that is associated with misclassification. So this is why I like to share this information, because you want to make sure that you understand that you're not controlling the work of the independent contractor. You're hiring them for a specific task. You're asking for their help. They own their own business, or they are an independent contractor that's providing a service. And you want to make sure that you sway away from, appearing to manage them as an employee, where you're telling them when to show up, where to show up, what to do, those types of things. You really want to keep that language away from your independent contractor agreements, because again, that can lead you to misclassification, and you don't want to get hit with fines if they decide to go after you. So just some of the ramifications of classifying employees as independent contractor can include a $50 fine for each unfiled W-2 form. So if you hire an independent contractor, just times that by 50 and see how much you owe. Monetary penalties from failing to withhold taxes, from their paychecks if you classify them incorrectly. You also can get hit with tax penalties from between 0.5% and 25%. So be careful of that. You also, can impose fines from the IRS and possibly be suspected for fraud or intentional employee misclassification. So be very careful, guys, when it comes to independent contractor versus W-2, because I don't want to see anybody getting in trouble because the fines are hefty, and the goal is to save as much money, especially if you're a startup company and need that help. So just make sure that you work with a professional like myself, or someone that, that can help you write these correctly. Maybe, again, an HR consultant, or working with a legal firm that can help you put together something that keeps you out of trouble. So I hope that you enjoyed this awesome information in order to keep yourself compliant and away from possible lawsuits when hiring an independent contractor. Again, my name is Shamara with SWHR Consulting. If you need some assistance or some guidance in creating an independent contractor, I am here to help. You can always reach out to me at swhrconsulting.com, or you can give us a call at 702-979-2119, or you can always find us on a social media platform such as LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Again, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this information. Thank you guys. Bye.